Well, anyway, I think that's all. I guess is how we fans interpret it. I guess, and we do interpret these things. It's like there's some people who
Right.
go in one direction, some people go in another. It all ends up in fan fiction or in fan art or whatever. It's lovely to
Yeah.
watch. Actually, it is really good. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Some fans are confused about exactly when Arnold's parents disappeared. Basically, the timeline of when they
hmm
came back and then to Hillwood and then when they went off again. How old was Arnold when his parents left?
Well, it's not really specific. It's after his first birthday, somewhere probably between ages 1 and 2. And he's pretty precocious. When his parents are gone, you can tell he's old enough to say a few words. And so I'm thinking he's somewhere between 1 and 2, and then let me think. In Parents' Day, we pick up the narrative where he's crawling down the hall in the middle of the night, and Grandpa takes him back up to his room, and he's asking questions and saying sentences. So he's probably about 2 then, I suppose. That's about as far as I figured it out.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. If Rhonda is so rich, why does she go to a public school?
I know it's kind of weird for those parents to be sending Rhonda to PS 118. It's funny, we kind of Rhonda didn't really get her character developed until we got in a season or 2, I think, and so she sort of got richer as the series went on, and I think it was just because it was funny to us to have a character who had such snobby parents, so out of touch and so into material things. And so it was a little bit unreal. There she was living in a little urban apartment that wasn't very nice, and they were carrying on like they would live in a big house out in the suburbs. So there's something kind of not really realistic about that. And,
No, I don't know. It's like,
you got to go as far as you can with something like that, and to still make it work. Rhonda still has to go to Arnold's school. So
is there a possibility
that's
that Rhonda's parents are so obsessed with being rich and want to save so much money? It's like, oh, that public school will do. Let's just send her down there.
Yeah.
No, that was an interesting thought. Okay, what are Brainy, Nadine, Sid, and Sheena's last names?
Brainy, Nadine, Sid, and Sheena.
Yeah.
We never came up with last names for any of those people.
Really? So basically, they're just known by their first names.
Yeah, it is unknown.
Yeah. They're like Brazilian footballers. Basically, it's like it's
come to
Raphael, and that's what they are. Okay, next question. Could you see yourself making a comic version of a continuation of the lives of Hey Arnold characters? You mentioned the book before about Helga when she's 40. I mean, have you ever considered what happens to the rest of them?
Sure. I'm open to all that stuff. It would be really fun to do kind of graphic novel interpretations of stories, and I'm open to that.
No, that's really interesting. Well, what besides Helga? I mean, is there any other? Do you ever wonder what happens to any of the other characters? Years ahead.
It's cool to think of a sort of like the characters as young adults. I saw a really funny just recently, I was just linked to it by one of the Arnold fans who is very active in working on the kind of continuation of the Arnold fandom, and she sends me links to. I think they're showing up they're either on people's Tumblr pages or on DeviantArt. And this person, I'm trying to think what her name was. Anyway,
is it Mia?
She did very funny drawings of all the Arnold kids as young adults. They're all like in their mid-20s. Which is cool, and this is exactly what's going on. The kids who were children watching Hey Arnold on Nickelodeon in the 90s are now mostly out of college. I would say they kind of range from about 20 to 30 in age, and a lot of them are out of college and out getting their first jobs and stuff.
Yeah.
And the artists, these were really terrific drawings of these kids, and they were sort of like I would assume that this woman, probably studied fashion design, because the fashion stuff was really spot on and very, very detailed and cool. And the faces, I loved the drawings. They all look like real humans.
Yeah.
Which is that thing we were just talking about, where Helga seems so real. I've invested so much kind of personality and detail into her, and Franny in her voice work as the actor who brought her to life. Franny brought so much reality to the character that you sort of want to see what Helga would look like if she was 25, which would be kind of like how old she would be if, I don't know what the math is exactly, but, if she was 9 in 96.
Yeah.
And so anyway, when I see this stuff, I'm like, God, it's there they are, and it makes you want to do episodes where they're all in their 20s and they're just having their experiences now, and they're talking about what it was like to be kids growing up on that neighborhood in the 90s.
Okay, the next one is not necessarily a question; it's more of a request from people. Everyone knows that you do with the voice of Brainy on the show. They ask, can you do his heavy breathing for them?
Oh, sure. Hold on, just a sec. Okay, here goes.
I'm scared.
There you go.
Awesome.
You notice he never says much.
No, he doesn't. Yeah. Okay, so how do you think Arnold evolved as a character throughout the series? So basically from Downtown as Fruits to the Journal, how do you think he evolved?
At the end of the series? That's a good question. He evolved probably less than many of the other characters because there was something basic about Arnold that I just believed from the start. He was really meant to be who he was from the start. The main changes were at the very beginning, he was a daydreamer who was sort of in trouble for his daydreaming. He was such a daydreamer that teachers would have to say, Arnold, stop looking out the window and pay attention. And the kids, the pilot, the very first thing that happens is he's completely not there. He's sort of tumbling through space above the earth when Helga goes, Arnold, you're up, and then he's standing there on the ball field, and they're supposed to, he's up at bat. And here's the deal: when we got into series, that was kind of how it started. When I first did it, Arnold was in the little claymation shorts. He was very small. He was about 5, and a chronic daydreamer who would daydream his way through church and school. And I just realized when we got into the narrative, long form Hey Arnold series that wasn't going to work. He needed to snap out of it and be more in control of the series. And so we did a few. And there's a few in the earliest shows that we even we tried to open them with a daydreaming sequence. I think a couple of them. There was one. Which one was that? Kelly James did the board, and it was really terrific. I think it was Operation Ruthless. Remember that in the first season when they all go to the cheese festival?
Yeah, I remember that one.
That one started with Arnold and Gerald walking down the street, and Gerald snaps him out of a daydream, and they're just, remember, it opens, they're on the street, and they're talking, and they walk by, and there's the cheese festival, and Arnold says, he wants to see Ruth McDougal or whatever. But the beginning of that, Kelly James did a terrific daydream sequence where Arnold was in a pinball machine, and he was about 2 inches tall, and he was kind of being chased by pinballs and he gets caught on one, and he clangs into something, and it lights up, and you can see that the pinball machine is a kind of a love pinball machine where Ruth, there's little pictures of Ruth that are like things that you hit, and little Helgas, and it was great. It was so terrific, and I loved it. But we realized even then, and we were only a few episodes in, and we were like, man, these daydreams are taking up a minute of storytelling time that we can't take up. We need all 11 minutes to get. 11 minutes isn't very long.
Yeah.
And we wanted to have these little 3-act stories that had a bunch of stuff happen.
Yeah.
And so the daydreams basically went away. And Arnold became, it was cool anyway, because, I was trying to make Arnold an active character who would be at the center of the activity, and a kid who's a chronic daydreamer is not really good for that. And so that evolution happened right away. And then he sort of settled into who he was. Arnold was this sort of little Buddha who was wiser than everyone. And he kind of, do you remember in the Christmas show, there's a wonderful scene where it's late. It's probably about 2/3 of the way through the story, or even further, where they've gone through their whole day of trying to buy the presents, and they've got everything but the Nancy Spumoni snow boots, and Arnold runs into they go back to the Mr. Bailey, and he says no snow boots, no deal, and he goes home, and then there's a scene where he's lying in bed, and he's looking out the skylight, and it's a great shot. Arnold's lying in bed, and the camera is directly above him, and it just sort of slowly trucks out, and beautiful music plays, and you're sort of thinking about what Arnold's thinking. This is where Arnold kind of went with that daydreamy stuff. He became more like this sort of magical kid who's he's wishing all this stuff, and we're kind of getting an idea. We, the audience, are going along with him as he's trying to solve his problems. And I just thought, that's so cool. Arnold's like this kid who he's very wise, and he's trying to make things happen, and it's like that. The series is about his wishes for things to come true. And instead of him just sort of daydreaming like he did at the beginning and not knowing what's going on. So it's more like he became kind of he was like the wisest of all those kids, and kind of trying to think of everything. And then the kids, as the series went along, the kids' relationship with him was what evolved. They finally real often they'll go to him for advice, or they'll he'll have something helpful to say to the other kids to help them with their problem, and you realize Arnold's involved and he's thinking about them. But by the end of the series, there was that one where they even kind of fired him from the job of being the advice guy. And then, of course, everything goes really, really wrong, and they all come running back and ask him to they want to hire him back. So that's kind of where it went. Arnold became a sort of a know-it-all that they really loved and trusted, but once in a while they'd be kind of fed up with him. And Helga, of course, her role was to make fun of that from the very start. She's always like, oh, what's your Nobel Prize winning idea of football head? She would be, she would be pointing out to the audience that she knew, and everyone knew, that Arnold was a big know-it-all.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a long answer.
That is a long answer. Thank you very much for it as well. Okay, this is the last question related to the Hey Arnold TV series, and it goes like this. Were there ever any plans to have a 6th season of Hey Arnold before the show was cancelled?
Well, we did. I don't even know where they are now, but I remember I kept a list of episode ideas that were just that sort of the hopper where all the ideas went, and there were plenty of ideas that we had still that we wanted to make, and so yeah, we would have just gone right on. That's kind of the way I am. I would have happily made a 6th and beyond, but
really?
it's more like
if
they had 100 episodes and they felt like that was enough for now, and they could just run them in reruns, and they wanted to move on to the movie and take the franchise to the next level. And since the movie that was released, the Hey Arnold the movie, the one about saving the neighborhood, didn't make enough money for them, then that was the answer to their question. That the franchise isn't big enough, it doesn't have those kind of legs, we're done.
Yeah.
And so that's how.
But I have to ask. Storyline-wise, I mean, it's like if something dramatic happened in the Jungle movie after the 5th season, I mean, what would have happened in the 6th season? I mean, would it have been dramatically different from the other 5 seasons if it was made?
I suppose. It's like I really don't know. I would have had to cross that bridge when I came to it, and so one of the things I realized pretty clear to me when I look back on the show with 10 years distance is, man, we were just completely flying along by the seat of our pants. We were doing the best we could. We didn't know, and it's not the nature of this work. I just had a conversation with an old friend of mine about this, where we were talking about how cool it would be to make TV where you sit down and say, we're going to make 65 half hours, and it'll end at 65 with this event, and here we are at the start, and we're going to here are all the characters, and we're going to give them all these kind of roles, and we'll arc each year. The series will have an arc, and then at the end of the whole thing, there's an even bigger arc that it was all leading to. But nobody has that kind of luxury. We don't get to do that. We just basically sell them a series based on a pilot and a handful of premises about what you think would happen. And as soon as you get into it, you find out, oh, well, that's not going to be how it's going to go. You find out something else, or you realize that an idea that you had was stupid and didn't really work, and so on. And it's much more improvisational than that. And that's why you kind of paint yourself into a corner. I mean, the whole thing with Arnold's Parents was an example of me discovering as I went along that I had a bunch of unresolved stuff that I was going to have to deal with. And then once I did it, it seemed very, very sad to me and kind of great on one level. There were things about it that were really cool and memorable, and the fans really responded to. But I thought, wow, now what? So you kind of get into this stuff and you just don't know. And it's kind of what I like about it too. I mean, I'm not really complaining.